Hey guys, and welcome back to another week of What's for Dinner. I'm really excited about this week of meals just because we're back home in my kitchen in Utah. We're not visiting my family in New Mexico anymore, so I'm just so happy I was able to cook in my own kitchen. It was really nice, but I hope you guys enjoy these meals, and if you are new here, I post one of these videos every single Sunday like this, and I'd love to have you over at my channel, so go ahead and subscribe down below the video. But let's get cooking some What's for Dinner. To kick this week off, we made sheet pan shrimp fajitas. To get us started, I'm just chopping up one green onion into smaller pieces along with a red onion. I'm just using about half of that red onion. I did want to let you guys know, if you're not really into shrimp, I totally get that. You could use chicken or some steak as a substitute of the shrimp in this recipe. Just adjust the cooking time. Over to my medium-sized bowl right here, I'm just adding in our vegetables, and then I'm going to be adding in our shrimp. This is almost a pound of shrimp. The original recipe called for 1.5 pounds. I just simply didn't have 1.5 pounds of shrimp. And now to get this seasoned up, I'm just adding some paprika, cumin, onion powder, garlic powder, chili powder, some salt and pepper, and then about a tablespoon of some olive oil. I did want to let you guys know I do have all of these recipes linked down below in my description box. And if you ever struggle with finding those recipes, just let me know in the comments down below and I could send you those recipes directly in the exact measurements. After I thoroughly stirred that together, I just got out my cookie sheet and I put some parchment paper on top, and then I just placed that mixture right on top of that and put it in my preheated oven. For our toppings, I just made a can of pinto beans along with some sour cream, salsa, cheese, some cilantro lime rice, green chilies, and some cherry tomatoes. Here's my burrito all plated up. Those seasonings on the fajita vegetables and the shrimp was spot on. This recipe was really good and we were impressed. For this night's dinner, we made some creamy beef and shells. To get us started off, I'm just pouring about 8 ounces of this elbow pasta into my boiling water. You could use any type of pasta you guys have on hand. Over to my saucepan, I'm just cooking up about 1 pound of some lean ground beef. Once it is cooked and I drain the grease, I'm just adding in 1 diced white onion along with about 4 cloves of garlic. To begin seasoning, I'm just using 1.5 teaspoons of Italian seasoning along with 1 teaspoon of paprika and then about 1 teaspoon of garlic powder and onion powder. This recipe did call for 1/2 teaspoon of mustard powder. I just didn't have mustard powder on hand, so I did not add that. Now that my onion is translucent, I'm just going to be adding in my 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and then I'm just going to stir that flour all together so it gets incorporated with the beef and the rest of the seasonings. Now I'm just going to be adding in my 2 cups of beef broth along with my 1 15-ounce can of tomato sauce, and then I'm just going to stir this together and let it come up to a simmer. Once this was simmering for about 5 minutes, I added my 3/4 cup of heavy cream along with my 6 ounces of some sharp cheddar cheese. You don't have to add the cheddar cheese, but if you guys know me, I love cheese, so I added that. And then I let this simmer all together for about 10 more minutes, and then it was done. I went ahead and I added our creamy beefy mixture into our elbow noodles and gave it a good stir. I did add a little bit more salt and pepper on top just for some extra flavor. Here's my plate all plated up. I just served it on top with some Parmesan cheese and some parsley flakes. I served it alongside of a side salad. This meal was super, super good. I loved it. Also, I do think this is a great kid-friendly option, so if you have some picky eaters, go ahead and give this one a shot. For this meal, we made some extremely flavorful French onion chicken. To get this recipe started, I'm just chopping up 2 smaller sized white onions. I'm just going ahead and halving them and then slicing them thinly. This recipe called for 1 large onion, so if you have a big onion, just go ahead and use the big one. Over to my saucepan with 2 tablespoons of oil in it, I added the onions, and then I'm just going to season them with a little bit of some salt, pepper, and thyme. I'm going to reduce the heat to medium-low, and I'm just going to be stirring this occasionally until the onions are caramelized and jammy. It took about 25 minutes. While the onions were cooking, I started on our chicken, so I'm just chopping up 2 chicken breasts. This is about 1.5 pounds of chicken, and I'm dicing it into little pieces just like that. Now that our chicken is all chopped up, I put it in a separate bowl, and into that chicken I'm adding about 1/2 teaspoon of oregano along with a little bit of some salt and pepper, and then I'm adding 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and then I'm just going to stir this to combine. Now that my onions are the way I like them to be, I just remove them from my saucepan and put them on a separate plate. Back over to my same saucepan, I just added about 1 tablespoon of oil to that, and then I added our chicken, and you're just going to cook this chicken all the way through. Now that our chicken is all cooked through, I'm just adding in our 1.5 cups of some beef broth along with our onions that we cooked up earlier. I just stirred this all together and let it come up to a simmer for about 10 minutes until it thickened just like this. And then right on top of that chicken, I just melted down about 1 cup of some mozzarella cheese. The original recipe to this called for Gruyere cheese, I think it's called, but I didn't have any of that, so I just added the mozzarella. Here is my plate all plated up. I just served it alongside of some peas and some broccoli and served it on top of a bed of mashed potatoes. This came out amazing, 10 out of 10. I really do think you guys should make this recipe. I think you'll love it. For this meal, I made some Swedish meatballs and some gravy. Into my large bowl right here, I have my pound of ground beef, and to that ground beef, I'm just adding 1/4 cup of diced up onions, along with 1/4 cup of some panko breadcrumbs. Now let's start seasoning this up. So now I'm just adding about 1/2 teaspoon of some garlic powder, 1/8 teaspoon of pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of some salt, and then you're gonna add 1/4 teaspoon of ground allspice, and then 1/4 teaspoon of some ground nutmeg. I just gave this a good stir, and then I added in our 1 cracked egg to that, and then I stirred this once again until everything was thoroughly combined together. Now that everything is mixed together, I'm going to start rolling these into little meatballs. So I did decide to make little miniature meatballs, but you guys can make bigger meatballs, medium, large size meatballs, kind of whatever you guys prefer. Just adjust the cooking time to whatever size you guys have. Over to my saucepan, I added my tablespoon of butter along with my tablespoon of some oil. I let that melt down and start simmering, and then I'm going to add in our meatballs one at a time, and I'm just going to cook these on each side until they are all cooked through. Now that my meatballs are all cooked, I just got out a separate plate and I just placed those meatballs on that plate. And over there on the side back burner right there, I just have some egg noodles cooking, and that is going to go for one of my sides. Back over to my saucepan, I just wiped that clean, and then I added 4 tablespoons of some butter, and then I added in my flour, and I'm just going to whisk this together until that flour starts to brown. Now that our flour has browned, I'm going to start adding in our beef broth. So I am adding in 2 cups of beef broth, and I am adding this in slowly and whisking it while I'm adding it. You really don't want to add it in all at once, or the flour is going to get hard and clumpy and just not be smooth and perfect. So once that is all whisked together, I'm going to be adding in our cup of heavy cream. Then I'm going to let this come up to a simmer. And then next I'm going to be adding in our tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, followed by our teaspoon of some Dijon mustard. Once again, I did let this simmer until that gravy started to thicken up. Now that my gravy is a little bit thicker, just the way I like it to be, I just added back in those meatballs and I coated them in the gravy. I let this sit for about 1 to 2 minutes until it started to slowly simmer. I just sprinkled some parsley flakes on top for color, and here's my plate all plated up. This was super, super good. You could serve this on top of a bed of mashed potatoes if that's what you prefer. I just served it alongside of a side salad, and this one was a total hit. For this night's dinner, we made some baked chicken parmesan, and this one has been a family favorite for almost a year now. So into my pot of some boiling water, I just added about a pound of some pasta noodles. Yes, I did add 3 different types of pasta noodles, but I just added what was in my pantry. For my marinara sauce, I'm just using this Prego roasted garlic parmesan, but you could use any type of marinara sauce you guys prefer. For my chicken, I used about 3 small to medium-sized chicken breasts. I did slice these thinly in half just like this. I find slicing them like this works best for chicken parmesan. To start on our Parmesan coating, I'm just adding about a tablespoon of this panko breadcrumbs into my bowl. This is the Italian seasoned panko breadcrumbs, if you were wondering. And then I'm just adding in about half a cup of Parmesan cheese, along with a teaspoon of dried oregano, and then a half a teaspoon of garlic powder, and then a teaspoon of salt, a half a teaspoon of black pepper, and then I just stirred this together. All our egg wash is 2 eggs cracked in this bowl, and then you're just going to whisk it up. To start assembling our chicken, I just sprinkled a little bit of some salt and pepper on each side of these chicken breasts. Then I put it in our egg wash and then coated it in our panko mixture. And then I placed it on our lined cookie sheet with aluminum foil. I did grease that aluminum foil with a little bit of olive oil beforehand. Now that our chicken is finished cooking in the oven, I just used about a cup of our marinara sauce that was on the stove, and I just distributed that evenly on each of the chicken breasts. And then I put a little bit of some mozzarella cheese on top, and then I stuck this under the broiler for about 3 minutes to make that cheese nice and bubbly. Here is our chicken parmesan out of the oven. This one comes out great every single time. I think it's kind of fail-proof in my opinion, and I do think this recipe is definitely kid-friendly. I have made it on my channel a few times before. It is so flavorful and really, really good. I think you guys should really give it a shot. This one is for all of my meatless meal friends out there. We made some vegetarian chili. Over to my large pot, I have some oil in there simmering, and then I just added in about a cup of some frozen celery and then a cup of some frozen carrots. The reason mine is frozen is just because I bought it a while ago and then just froze it, and then I'm adding in 1 chopped onion along with 3 cloves of garlic. This recipe is a super great one if you're wanting to sneak some vegetables in somewhere, but anyways, I just stirred this together for about 8 minutes to let those vegetables get softened. Now that my veggies are soft the way I like them, I'm going to start seasoning this up. So I'm just adding in about a tablespoon of chili powder, a tablespoon of cumin, 2 teaspoons of some dried oregano, 2 teaspoons of some salt, and then about a half a teaspoon of some ground black pepper. This recipe does call for about a fourth teaspoon of some cayenne pepper. I didn't add the cayenne pepper just because my daughter was eating this meal with us and I did not want to burn her mouth off. Now that our veggies are coated in all of the seasonings, I'm just adding our 2 4-ounce cans of roasted green chilies, along with our 2 cans of diced tomatoes. For this recipe, you're going to need about 3 15.5-ounce cans of beans. You could use really any type of beans you guys have on hand. I chose to use 2 cans of kidney beans and 1 can of cannellini beans, but you could use black beans, pinto, kidney, seriously any type of beans you guys have on hand. I just added 2 cups of our broth. I stirred this around and let this simmer on my stove for about 30 minutes. Now that that's simmering on the stove, I'm going to show you guys how to make this amazing cornbread recipe I found. So you need some buttermilk. You need about 1 cup and 1/4 of buttermilk, but I didn't have that, so I just added in a tablespoon of some lemon juice along with our milk, and I let this sit for about 5 minutes. To begin on our cornbread, I'm just adding 1 cup of flour. This is all-purpose flour, along with our 3/4 cup of cornmeal, and then our half a teaspoon of some kosher salt, and then our half a teaspoon of baking soda. I added 1 teaspoon of some baking powder, and then I just gave this a good stir. The recipe to this calls for 1 cup of granulated sugar, but I've been having a lot of sugar in my diet recently, so I only added 1/4 cup of that sugar, and then I added in our butter along with our 1/4 cup of vegetable oil, and then our 1/3 cup of honey. Now you'll just add your 2 cracked eggs and then your buttermilk, then you're just going to stir this up to the best that you can do. Now that our buttermilk is well combined, I just pulled out my 8x8 baking dish and sprayed it with some non-stick spray, and then I just added that mixture right in there, and then I just tossed it into the oven. Now that my chili is almost finished cooking, I just added my can of drained and rinsed corn, and I let this simmer for another 5 to 10 minutes. Here is our cornbread out of the oven. This came out absolutely perfect. I really can't express to you guys how amazing this was. It was not your typical dry cornbread. It was moist, it was amazing, and it was so flavorful and sweet and just so yummy. But this chili also did turn out so yummy. I just served it on top with some lime, some cheese, sour cream, and cherry tomatoes. I do think you should give this recipe a shot. This past week was Brynleys' first birthday, and yes, that year flew by so quickly, and I'm still surprised that my little girl is 1 year old. I've genuinely grown so close to so many of you guys here over on my channel. You guys are seriously the sweetest supporters in the world, and I can't thank you enough. So I just thought I'd share some of Brynleys' first birthday with you guys. So we did have it over in New Mexico while we were visiting my mom, my dad, and my younger sister. So that is where this little birthday party, I guess, took place. But I did make her a little healthy smash cake. So that's what she's doing right now, is pretty much destroying her first birthday cake. She was so cute doing it though, so I thought you guys would enjoy it. But she also stood for the very first time on this day, and I did happen to catch it on film, so you guys will see that here in a second. But I hope you guys enjoy this little birthday party. And that is a wrap of this week's What's for Dinner. I hope you guys all enjoyed it and got some meal inspiration out of it. Like I said before, I post one of these videos every single Sunday, and I'd love to have you over here, so go ahead and subscribe down below the video. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.